And then all these guys who like to go shooting and do more stuff, they can expand on guys out. So I'm gonna stick with the basics, keep repeating that. Get the guns in the home, get them comfortable with them. They want to graduate college from there, they can.
Okay.
All right, I guess we're gonna get going here. Welcome to the Concerned Residents of Wakefield meeting of January 7th, 2007. And if we could all begin by joining us in the pledge.
Where's the flag?
2013, excuse me. Right over here. Right on the counter.
Oh, there it is. Sorry about that, brother.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we're going to be talking about school safety. We have some guest speakers here tonight. We have Chief Ken Fifield from the Wakefield Police Department. Frank Covie, excuse me, is here to speak. We also have Jay Mcintire, the Superintendent of SAU 64, is joining us tonight. So, if Ken, you want to start off? Or?
Sure. Well, I just basically want to start out by saying that after that horrendous shooting in Connecticut, a lot of people are concerned, and they want to know, are we safe here at home? I give it a minute.
The orange cooler makes a heck of a lot of racket.
Guys standing in front of you, guys do.
Wow, that's much better. All right. So, anyways, just can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay.
You want to use the mic over there? There's a mic right over there.
I'll just try to speak louder. This is just kind of Ralph wanted me to come down, a couple of people to come down, and just so that I think that as a community that we could get a better feeling of where we are, and to have this knowledge that our kids are safe, and then also know that we've looked into what we have and what we could do to improve the safety at school. So after the shooting took place, I talked to Mark O'Brien. I think all you guys know him. He's my lieutenant. He met with the principal. We went through the school. We did a checklist, looked at a lot of things. He had a good discussion with him. They went to the school board meeting, Mark did, and had also brought some of the things they talked about to the school board. And I think it's, if you basically want a kind of a report card, for lack of a better term, of where we are, is that right now, the school is a pretty safe place to be. But we did identify some areas that we could increase it. And so we had a pretty good discussion, and we looked at, pretty thoroughly looked at some areas that we could do some improvements on, and we looked at some procedural things that we could do. So just running down through some basics is, first of all, we're fortunate because the school, obviously, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, but we'll just touch base. The school is about a mile away from the police department. Typically at the police department during school time, there is generally a couple of officers in the building, and because the other officers are on patrol, use the headquarters is downtown, they're more often towards the Sanbornville area than they are in maybe other out parts of town. So if an event happens, we have a very short response time. So that negates the issue of needing to be at the school, physically. So the next thing is, okay, if the response time is going to be relatively short, or should be, then what are the safeguards that you could do at the facility that would slow a person that's coming in? So we looked at a few of those things, and there's a couple of things I'm not going to talk about, because it's kind of like if we did an audit of Profile Bank, and we decided to make a couple of changes, well, we can't make those public, because you can't tell people what the security measures of Profile Bank are, because then the bad guys know what the security measures are. So there's some things that we talked about that were very useful, that we're going to make some changes to, that I won't talk about. And there's some things that are going to be fairly obvious. That'll be a couple of structural changes that'll help. And the idea is that if an assailant goes to the building, it's not so much completely stopping a person, but slowing that person down so the police response can be there before they can create havoc. And so that's the areas that we've looked into. That's in general with the school. On the other notion is that as a town, we have a fairly well citizenry, and I think we need to promote that. Things tend not. My opinion is that things tend not to happen in a town that's well armed, and I believe in people exercising their gun rights, people having guns, and knowing how to use them. And, to that end, we've offered a couple of, we had a couple of basic gun classes this year. We'll probably have a couple more, and if need be, we'll even do that more. But I'm not so sure, it's kind of like this old saying, well, how come the gun shop never gets robbed? It's because it's a gun shop. And we want to have that opinion with Wakefield too. How come we don't have these horrendous things happen in Wakefield? It's because we're armed. And that's not a bad platform to start with. But I've been just kind of rambling a little bit there, and so to recap, I think we're in good shape because we have a short response time. I think we're in good shape because the facility is safe and it's going to be made a little safer. I think we're in good shape because we're going to take a couple of measures that I think will be highly effective that I won't exactly talk about. And we have a pretty good plan in place. So nothing is perfect, but I think we're probably one of the better communities as far as safety for the kids around. We did take it seriously, and we have looked at it. And so with that, we can kind of go from there. Steve, I don't know if you've anything to add towards that from the school end.
Well, just from the same thing that you said, we had that discussion, but it was in non-public. So, but first off, I'm not here representing the school board. I'm just here as a citizen like everyone else. I just want to get that out there. But like you said, everything was done in non-public, so I can't really discuss what we talked about.
Right, without discussing what we talked about in non-public, just the general concepts that we've addressed. I want people to know that we've addressed every issue. I may not be able to talk about all of the issues specifically, but we've addressed safety, response, improvements,
Right.
and a game plan.
Right.
which are the main components of keeping the kids safe. So I think, without saying what we did on every one of those, we've addressed all those areas.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's the main thing. But the other point of that too is I really do feel that this is New England, and you know, taking an example of when we had the bank robbery 2 years ago, you know, citizens stood up and dealt with that issue as it was ongoing. You wouldn't see that in other communities. You're not going to see that in New York. Everybody's going to look the other way. We have a different type of citizen in New England, and it's also an armed citizen. And my hope is that climate, that mentality, you know, wards off some of these crazies. And so the best thing to be as prepared as you can. So on a personal level, you know, if I can encourage you guys to get, if you're not comfortable with guns and things like that, we can make you comfortable. If you have friends that you think might benefit from that, we can make them comfortable. And you know, we have some good volunteers doing that. Mike and Lino, Frank volunteered, you know, putting that course together. And I think they're going to talk about a little bit about gun safety, but Ralph.
I'm going to do my best impersonation of Mr. Brown, speak loud for the microphone. Do you have an idea if it became a budgetary item? Do you have an idea what it might cost if there was a guard at the school every day of the week, 4 or 5 hours a day? Is there a idea that would cost a lot? Or?
I do, and actually after this happened, because you've probably seen the news and they're promoting an armed police officer at every school in the country. I don't think that's a bad concept, but you have to weigh the necessity for it for the overall cost. Now, in a perfect world, maybe you would put an armed cop in every school in the country. But is that really necessary? And in our situation, I don't think it is. Would it be more safe? Possibly. But I don't think it's necessary. But the cost factor on it, if you wanted to hire a cop, which would be a school resource officer, set them up in the school, and give them probably a benefits package, you're looking at $39,000 probably for a police officer, and up to, depending on what package he takes, $18,000 for a benefits package. So with other expenses, you're looking at $60,000. Now, do you need that? What would we do if we had that? For example, if we had an officer, well, the 180 days that he was at school, he'd be at school. During the summertime, I'd have him on the road doing other duties. So could I make use of an officer? Yeah, I could. But do I think it's necessary? No, I don't. I think that with everything we looked at, we have a pretty safe situation. We can make it more safe, and we don't have to go to that. Now, I think every school across the country probably should look at their own situation and make their own decision. So I'm sure a lot of police will be coming into schools. Certainly could do it here, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think we can make this, you know, it is safe, and I think we can make it safer, and I don't think we need to hire a cop to do it.
Thank you. Any other questions, Chief? Am I talking as loud as Steve? No. Well, I guess next would be Frank Covie, and I was asked the question, you know, what your experience is, and I had a limited amount of information for the guy who was asking me, so maybe you can explain all that to him.
Thanks for having me here. I'm a resident of the town. I've lived here 30 years, and my subject and my involvement is security, entry-level security. That get your attention? How about this?
Thank
personal security standpoint, everybody should have with them a device to make some noise and to get some attention. And you should all have a means of communication, either with a phone or a radio. I carry both in my job. I think the idea here is that the reason a lot of cars are not hijacked anymore is because if you touch them, they make a lot of noise. And that's the background of security. First of all, a little show and tell, I can tell you who I am. I'm a contract killer. No, strike that. I'm a contract security officer. I work for the federal government, and with the alphabet soup of PSO, Protective Service Officer, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and FPS, Federal Protective Police. That's what I do for a living. I work for the federal government in an armed position down at the federal building, at various federal buildings around the state. Right now, I work with a team of 5 guys who are in a security-conscious position that emphasizes entry-level control. In other words, if you want to draw an example of your school at a federal building, everything's locked down. There are no ways to get into the federal building unless you clear through us. We have one entry point, which we have a magnetometer, we have an x-ray machine, and we have 5 armed guards. You don't need that at the school. But we're protecting federal government property. I also work as a court security officer for the state of New Hampshire as a bailiff. It's an armed position. It's really a bodyguard for the judges. So I understand security and entry-level protection. Security is smoke and mirrors. It involves essentially signage. Don't walk here, don't come here, don't do this, don't do that, no weapons into the federal building. It involves noise and verbiage. For example, if you go to an airport and it says, don't park here, you'll be towed, you look at it and move on. But if a voice is saying, and do not park in this area or you will be towed immediately, and if you see a uniformed officer standing out there, that's called presence, it deters crime. A cardboard cutout of a police officer at a drugstore will cut crime 20% because it plants the seed in people's minds of, I don't know what's going on in there. We do a lot of that, smoke and mirrors at the federal buildings. Your driveway says no trespassing. Well, nobody pays any attention to that anymore. However, I used to interview prisoners up at the Berlin prison and asked them, how'd you single out a house to rob? It's always simple. We looked around to see if there was no activity, no signs, no nothing. What deterred you from operating? He said, well, there was this one sign that said, this property protected by voiceless, barkless attack dogs. And I figured, I don't know what that is, so I better pass that and go to someplace else. So signage starts security. Smoke and mirrors says, you don't have to have a guard there all the time, but you can say, random security on patrol is around in this area. And so the whole question of security and deterrence follows verbiage, audio, signage, and presence. Now, the chief knows I'm not in police work. This is government, federal security, or private security, contract people. Our federal police dress like Kenny. They're all in black combat uniforms. And whether you know it or not, there is a federal police force that is out there. And right now, they're arming us and everybody else in FEMA with weapons. They've just graduated. The first Department of Homeland Security is taking over FEMA. And there will be martial law in the streets. Things are turning out not quite as you expected with this new operation, but there is a federal police force out there, which bypasses the original constitution of the armed forces that drops down to state police, local police, federal police. There's now this federal police thing in the middle. I don't want to go anywhere with that, but just tell you that's what is being done now. From the standpoint of your own safety and security, the chief knows I also teach a course in personal protection in the home. It's a little more advanced course. It doesn't involve some basics, but it really is how to protect yourself from the standpoint of unaware, head up and locked, aware, alarm, and act. It's a very complex subject, and it's a long course. I'm not promoting it at this point. I'm just here to answer your questions, a Q&A about what you think you'd like to know about entry-level security and how to protect yourself. Questions? Yes, sir.
How early do you think kids or adults should be taking classes? Is it something where they need to start learning as soon as they're walking, maybe as soon as they're old enough to pick up and control a firearm? What would you recommend as a minimum age for education?
Well, I don't necessarily recommend firearms at all. When you are in a security awareness position, first of all, presence and verbal are your two key issues. That is just your availability. Hello, can I help you? Why do you think people say that to you in the store? Verbal is, I need to go or something. Escape, avoid, retreat, get out of there. The last thought anybody ever wants to think of about is a weapon that will cause death or destruction to other people. While we teach that as a last resort, it's the seventh step in our personal protection. It goes from presence, hello, here I am, we wear white suits so you shoot me first, is the kind of thing the government likes, and to verbal, I need you to do this or that. We bypass soft hand control, hard hand control. First weapon is spray, second weapon is a big baton, and the seventh step is a gun, which they don't want us to do except defensively. We try to neutralize anything and everything. I'm going to turn over to the chief tonight some videos in personal protection, which are rather graphic. They're done by the Los Angeles Police Department, that shows what can happen in your home. I don't know if you saw the news this morning, but there was an intruder who burst into a woman's home this morning. I don't know what state it was. A woman was there with her 2 children. He burst into the door. She took out a .38 and shot him 6 times.
Oh, man.
Yeah, did you see it this morning? And the sheriff said, hey, she did a better job than anybody. The last number of classes I've done, there's small classes of 6, 4 were women. The one before that was 3 out of 4 women. There's more and more women involved, and they want to bring their teenage sons involved. I have a video for youth that I'll turn over to you too, that gets people involved in the dangers of a gun around the house. They shouldn't be taught to use them, but if they have to protect themselves in some way, shape, or form, I don't have an age limit, but if a parent brings a youngster along with them to the class, that's fine. They're responsible for them. But I think everyone should be aware of the ability to defend yourself and what you should be doing and how you should be going from the unaware, I don't know what's going on around me, to aware, alarm, and act. And this is why communication to the chief, 911, making noise with a whistle or a bang or something, is your personal protection starter program. I do it every day. I just come off a 10-hour shift. And I think security is going to become so commonplace. Every hospital will have it. Eventually the schools will have it. I don't believe you necessarily need anybody full-time as long as you have enough verbiage and audio and other things that would dissuade somebody from knowing what you're doing there. Maybe an officer here. My son is a pilot with the airline, and half of them are armed and half of them aren't armed, and no one knows which ones are armed and which ones aren't armed. That's the way to go. In fact, in the cockpit, they don't even know if the other officer is armed or not. And that sort of smoke and mirrors dissuades people from doing things. So it starts with information.
Would you consider security cameras or cameras of any kind to be an effective tool? Whether it's
Nobody seems frightened by security cameras because it isn't an instant response. In other words, I'm on cameras all day in the buildings, and yeah, I think you should have security cameras as long as you have somebody sitting there in front of a bank of screens. We have a guy who sits there looking at 18 cameras. They prevent theft in Las Vegas by having cameras everywhere, but somebody has to monitor that camera and say, I need a man over here. Yeah, it's expensive too. The chief just told you, you want to have everybody say spend $500 a year more in taxes to cover this? You want to have every student parent pay $100 each so you can have a guard? Me, if you ask me, I'm giving you the job, no budget, I'm fine, I'll lock the school down immediately. Nobody comes or goes. Every child has a photo ID, can't come in, it gets renewed every year. Every teacher has a photo ID, and it's no questions asked, you're not coming in. Magnetometer, no hard metal, no backpacks. We run everything through our x-ray machines, including your shoes. If you come in and you set our magnetometer off, your shoes come off and it goes through the x-ray machine. That's the next way people are sneaking in. Boot knives. If you come down to the federal building, you're going to take your belt off now. You know why? Because somebody pulled a sword belt out of a belt. A flexible sword came out of somebody's belt. Somebody else had razor blades in their belts. So you're virtually undressing now. I don't like this. You know, you're going to... Well, you don't have to come in. I wouldn't allow anybody suspicious near a school, period. And I think the chief, this is his town. Remember, I work for a different entity. It's a serious matter, security.
Agree with that. Anybody else have any questions for Frank? Al?
I would just like to know, where the hell did we ever go wrong? I was brought up on an old farm years ago, 3/4 of a century ago. There was a gun in every single corner, and they were all loaded. I never saw any one of those guns, or any one of us kids. I've been handling guns ever since I was 8 years old.
I agree with you.
And not once do I ever remember anybody in that time era going out and having a massacre like what they're having today. Now where have we gone wrong?
Well, your era, and I'm a Depression Day baby, didn't have TV and video with all these action pistol
That's right,
killing
absolutely.
games that are changing people's minds and well, I want to say PFP, poop for parents. Where's the parental guidance and the parents and the grandmas and the grandpas and the sisters and the aunts and uncles? That's what's missing, the family unit. And the more you
When
can
I
get...
was a 5-year-old child, I had to work. When I got a little older, I worked in the barn. Then I went from the barn to the school bus to go to school.
We're
When
proud
I
of
got
you.
back home, I had to go work in the woods or work in the barn.
We're proud of you. Should be more like you.
Did it do bad for me?
No, it should
did
be
not.
more like you. All right, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Frank.
I also asked, now, I'm pretty lucky, my last name's simple, except on Friday and Saturday nights. But Mike and Lino, I asked them to come along to give some input, but I'm gonna ask Mike and Lino both to pronounce their own last name, so I don't damage it.
You wanna go first, Mike?
Yeah, sure.
You ever had time with their last name? How about mine?
Yours is all right, it's almost as easy as mine.
Well,
When you get me on three syllables.
in certain parts of my ancestral homeland of Italy, my last name is pronounced Smith. It's that common. However, here in America, it's pronounced Bonaparte. In any event, I'm a resident for 13 years here in Wakefield. I'm not a professional security agent such as Mr. Covie is, but I work for the Rochester School District in an administrative position. I'm the senior network administrator in the IT department. My primary job responsibility is data security, which is, well, that's more intangible than physical security, which is what we're talking about. But there's at least one important tenet in all of data security that should apply to future security measures here in our school system and even in our community, the broader part of our community. The chief touched upon things that he wasn't going to talk about. Well, let's just fast forward to the end game of all of this focus on security, and now the school and maybe the city has decided what they're going to do, how much they're going to spend, and they get it done. What the important quality I want to point out here is that everybody from the town officers down to, say, the custodians in the school district get to know what they need to know and nothing more. And furthermore, I would suggest that they all be required, everybody in the town government and the school administration, they'd be required to sign
a confidentiality agreement to not reveal any details about, well, that little exit sign isn't really an exit sign, and that little decoration isn't a decoration, they're both cameras. And there's a metal detector, you know, in the teacup, or whatever it is. Whatever it is. You need to know what you only get to know what you need to know. And if you start talking about it, it's not that we don't trust the people that work here, just like I'm pretty well trusted by the school district in Rochester. But I know enough to keep my mouth shut when people on the phone start asking me security questions about our data systems. And I have a pretty pat answer now that I've been voicing for 13 years, 14, I'm on my 15th year there now. Sir, you're a strange voice on the phone to me, and I'm not going to tell you anything about our computer systems. I'm not going to tell you how many computers we have, what we use for software, do we have a firewall? I can neither confirm nor deny that. This is confidential, and you're just a voice on the phone. But I work for the biggest security company in the world. I don't care. You're just a voice on the phone. You come to me, you show me a website, you show me products that I can recognize, we'll start talking about things if we're interested. If you, again, transfer that sort of approach to security to whatever you do here, I think you're going to be successful. Only a few people in the school, we have, I'll tell you what Rochester is doing, because this is fairly public knowledge. We put cameras in the schools, outside the schools and inside the schools, years ago. They are expensive. They're finicky. They're successful in foiling or solving the sort of mischief that every school, you know, goes through. You know, we get the pictures of the kid standing up on the rocks or whatever it is, looking right into the camera before he rips the camera off the wall. All he did was stop the recording of his face, and he paid for the repairs. So they solve those sorts of things, but they're not going to prevent the sort of thing that fomented this meeting and this long conversation, which is both local and you know, nationwide now, maybe even worldwide. So we have cameras. We had limited access to our buildings, very limited access. In the late summer, early fall of this year, they put in audio, video controlled access systems in every building. You walk up to the front door, usually in most schools it's just one door. You press a little button and you look in this little black box, and on the other end of the wire is a secretary or somebody who's got the button that lets you in, just like the old, you know, the old apartments that you see in the big city movies and TVs, only they're looking at you. There's a camera in there. They buzz you in, you go in, you go right to the office and you sign in and you take a badge and you're in and then you're out. The Wednesday after this last tragedy, the high school adopted, I guess, the next step, and it was, a lot of this was planned, the next step was to lock the school down at 7:30. High school and middle school are on a 7:30 to 2:15 schedule. That's when classes start, classes end. 7:30, all the doors were locked. The only way anybody could get in is with a key, magnetic entry card, or go to the front door of the building, one door per building. And you know, if anybody's been to Rochester, that's a long walk. Sometimes it can be a long walk even for a student. And you go in as the system allows you to go in. In 10 of 11 locations, or 9 of 11 locations, it's that video camera. And I'm not really sure what they're doing in the high school, because I get there about 7:30, 8 o'clock every morning, and the police officers out there letting people in. So we have a uniformed armed police officer, have had them for years, maybe decades, in Rochester. Certainly they had them the first year I started. There's one in the high school and one in the middle school, not in the elementary schools. So they're inching forward on this. There's some dynamic in place that's going on, meetings that I'm not invited to. I take care of data security, as I said. And they may do additional things. There's talk of the photo ID card. They already have photo ID cards, but they really don't do anything. They're inert. They're just, You know, they just identify the student, and they're not required to wear them. That's the biggest problem. I don't think I've ever seen a student wear his outside where I could see it. And most of them, if I ask them for it, they don't recognize me as a person of authority, even though I can begin the disciplines procedures against them if they're smoking in the boys' room. So I don't have an ID. I'm not going to frisk him, not going to touch him. It's the end of my life if I do. So most of the Wakefield students at the Paul School go on to high school at Spalding, I believe. My son did. So this is important, I think, for you to know, because arguably, you know, that age of 14, 15 to high school graduation is a pretty dangerous time for a lot of kids. And the kids from Wakefield are meshing in, and I can speak from personal experience when I was a kid, meshing into an established social order of all of those Rochester kids that went through elementary schools and then merged into the middle school, and now they get a bigger social group. Middle school kids all merge up to the high school. There's those social problems that we may all remember, and it gets, you know, uncomfortable sometimes. As far as physical security, they've got a team at the high school now. There's 6 or 8 people. They're always out and visible. They get the most important thing that they can carry, in my opinion, which is a radio direct to the central security office. So, don't know what's coming. I'm sure that the people in Rochester are keeping tabs on everything that's being developed from the federal and state level on down. Another part of my life, along with Lino and Frank, is that the 3 of us have put on the introductory to firearms here, hosted by the chief. I've been certified to do that by the NRA in 3 different disciplines. And the 3 of us are also safety officers for a leading competitive, worldwide competitive association for action shooting called the International Defensive Pistol Association. It puts us in a hands-on position to know and understand the use of firearms. I've never shot anybody. I don't want to. And frankly, I think that the use of firearms is best left to sporting purposes. But you know from this gentleman's experience, and which exactly mirrors my father's experience, grew up with guns in the house. They were loaded. The kids were told to keep your hands off them. They kept their hands off them. I do have some good news for you, though, sir. Accidental firearms deaths from 1900 to now have plummeted and are extremely rare now. Accidental firearms deaths. So, if that's any consolation, I don't know.
Now, if you don't mind me adding a little something.
Go right ahead.
I still teach for New Hampshire Fish and Game, plus I still teach for Fish and Game. I think I have over 50 years of teaching for Fish and Game in New Hampshire. And one of the things I used to do at my hunter safety classes, I would take a .357 Magnum revolver. I'd load it up, pull the hammer back, and I'd lay it on the table. That gun gonna kill somebody? Not unless somebody in here picks it up and goes and shoots someone. It isn't gonna do a thing, it'll stay there forever. A gun in a corner loaded, unless some human being with a, I don't know what possesses anyone to do that, and that is something else I wanted to bring up. Who is to say, in the mind of a human being, whether it be Chief Fifield, myself, Mankus, whoever in here tonight, doesn't walk out that door and something goes, and something like what happened down there in darn shame, all these massacres that are happening at schools, I don't know what's in back of them. There is something in back of these. But I do not understand how anyone, I'm going in to buy a gun. Who is to say, when I go in there, I'm perfectly fine. I fill out all the paperwork for the government. Everything passes. I get the gun, and all of a sudden something up here in this computer goes dink, and I go out and kill someone. Now, who's the one that's gonna pick out that person that,
If you'll permit me an editorial comment here. Your questions, your comments, and your statements, you brought up the balance points of this political discussion that's been going on for decades in this country. And with that loaded handgun on your table in front of you, you're right in saying that gun is not going to kill anybody. A lot of this controversy is over the regulation, legislation, and possible banning of inanimate objects that have no intentions, no emotions, no desires, no wants, no needs, no nothing. They're as inanimate as that coffee mug is. On the other hand, you're right. Whatever's going on between the ears of every one of us in this country is an unknown. Short of some real draconian medical measures, I don't think we're going to find those people. And I don't even know if it can be medically proven that this guy has the potential to go off his rocker. That guy does too. That guy over there doesn't. All those women over there don't have the problem. There's no easy answers here. You know, and right now it's in a very emotionally charged discussion at all levels. And I don't know, and meetings like this is a good idea. At least maybe the 15 or 20 of us here can calm each other down.
I think I have to agree with what Frank Covie said. That's the only thing I can think of myself personally from where I was brought up from. That this TV and internet and whatever they have today, the kids just they don't have to go to work like I did at a young age. I'm not knocking it a bit because I'll tell you, I think we were a lot better off 60, 70 years ago. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
You know, if you do the research, every mass shooting in these schools that happened was done by these kids were involved, you know, they had psychological problems and they were on drugs like Ritalin and all these drugs. I think they ought to investigate the drug industry with some of the drugs that they're pumping into these kids. And why do these kids have guns that are on these drugs? Let's look at what's happening here. Let's do some investigation with the drug industry and the kids instead of going after the average citizen that minds his own business and just wants to protect himself and have a gun. But yet the government wants to take our gun rights away from us, and that's wrong. They got to do some research with these medical industries, what kind of drugs they're giving these kids. And that's, you know, this is what's happened. All these school shootings, these mass shooters, if you do the research, it's all about these kids are on, you know, antidepressant drugs or something, you know, like that.
I see that. I can see that any day of the week.
I mean, the average person here is going to go out and kill somebody. I mean, everybody in here is a law-abiding citizen. And they're doing it to the soldiers too. They're giving drugs to these soldiers, and they come out of the military, and they got them on antidepressant drugs, and they got these soldiers, and the government is setting these people up, I think, too, to do this. It's staged, a lot of this stuff in this country.
I agree with you 100%. I was going to say that.
Well, I don't care. I'll say it like it is. I'll tell the government to their face, too.
That's right. Thank you.
And you,
Good job.
All this stuff is staged.
Leo, you want to be up?
Do I have to?
Well, you don't have to, no, but, you know.
I can.
You got something to say.
Just a quick little thing. I usually don't discuss my previous employment with very many people, other than my close friends and family. I've been owned a restaurant in town for going on 12 years, and my previous life was spent in a private facility with doing almost what Frank does. I did run the cafeteria for a large hospital in Massachusetts. Was promoted through the ranks and had security for, we ran the security, facilities, maintenance, we ran the thing. It was a private contract company, I don't want to say the name. And when Chief Fifield says that there's things he can't discuss, please don't take offense to that. There are things that, procedures, policies that need to be in place that should not be public. And I made some suggestions to Sergeant Lamb this weekend about certain things and what they should look into and stuff like that. So don't be offended if people say, you know, we got to keep it quiet. We can't do this. We can't do that. We handled unarmed security for the building. We all had radios, roving patrols, and Frank can, you know, tell you all about that again. It's just, security is a serious business. It is, there's a lot to it that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see, and it just, it takes a lot to, you know, control 300 kids over there. 422. You know, and 12 teachers, maybe 13 teachers. 43 adults in the building.
Well, there's probably a few, with principal, vice president, probably, I don't know, 50, about 50 adults.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's a lot of people to control that are, you know, you had fire alarm drills. I mean, to practice some of the things that you guys have discussed should be, you know, kept quiet. So, I mean,
Just a couple of recap things. A lot of good things came out tonight. You know, it's good that the community wants to know that we're taking this serious. Because, you know, we're a tight-knit community. We care about, you know, keeping things safe. But you know, a few things. Just touching on the self-defense part. One of the things that we do at the PD, not to pump the programs, but we do a women's self-defense. We do the gun safety. And I really believe that your areas in the country that are open to Second Amendment and open to protecting your home and open to an informed group of citizens who carry guns are going to be the safest. So that's a general rule. The community itself will be safer if we promote these things. Beyond that, the world has changed. It's not the same world that Al grew up in. It's not even the same world that I grew up in. And knowing that, you know, we could get into all the reasons why have everybody changed, why is it that way, but the thing is the climate has changed. And we have what is considered, you know, very precious soft targets that we're responsible to keep safe. And our job is to maybe not make the community like an airport or maybe a federal building, but to do all the reasonable things we can do here locally to make the targets harder. And that will involve some things you will know about and things you won't know about, obviously. But the fact of the matter is that tragedy got everybody's attention. That was the only good thing that came out of that. And unfortunately, we've all come to realize it is a crazy world now. And we have to just, we may not figure that out, or may not be able to stop that, but we have to harden the targets. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to harden the targets, and we're gonna stay safe. And anyways, that's where we're at. So I think this was a good forum, and people should know that we're going to keep everybody safe with all reasonable measures. So
I'd like to sum up and back everything the chief said. Security begins with you. You're the eyes and ears of the community, and if you see something, say something is an old rule. You see it, report it. You got a 911 call, you have a police department that's available to respond. So, presence and verbal. Your presence, seeing something suspicious, without confronting anybody, saying, "Can I help you, sir? Is there anything I can do for you? You look like a stranger." Verbal, communicate, report. You're the eyes and ears of the community, and this is a great, great community. And I side with the chief on that. It's a safe community because most of us are armed and trained. Thanks, guys.
I have a question for Chief Fifield, and it is in regard to what happened in Connecticut. And I only know what I heard or read. And it seems to me that the mother was a collector of guns, going to the fire, you know, and taking her son with her. And a lot of people seem to know that her son was disturbed. He was taken out of that school and given homeschooling because he was disturbed and didn't fit in. So in a case like that, where she was a collector of guns, and I'm not against that, I was brought up with guns, okay? What could have been done to, if we had that situation here? What could have been done to, I know there's invasion of privacy here too. Could someone have gone into that house and made sure that there was a gun safe and all of those guns were locked? Or could have someone, it seems maybe that tragedy could have been avoided if someone had done something. I mean, I might be wrong. What will be, will be. But what is your opinion on it? And if it was happening here, what would you do?
Okay, there's several things that come into play. First of all, when we teach gun safety, guns are safer with people who are aware. So first of all, if you're responsible for guns, you know that right in the home, you have to keep the gun away from children, mentally disturbed people, and anyone else who shouldn't be near a gun. So first of all, the very first basic rules that we talk about in gun safety is those guns should not have been available to a person who isn't suitable to have guns. So right there, she didn't exercise the first basic rule of gun safety. And, you know, and it's the same thing, you're not going to give a 5-year-old the keys to your car. And you're not going to, if you have 5-year-olds and grandchildren in the house, you're not going to leave your loaded revolvers on the table. You're going to exercise some due responsibility and some care. So if a person, if a local person knows that they have a mentally incompetent person or a disturbed person or a deranged person, yes, you can have a firearm, but yes, they should be locked, just as the keys to your car should be protected, but more so. So that's one thing. The next thing is that when you come across a person that you're concerned about, you're saying, this person's maybe, you know, off their, you know, whatever they're suffering from, should I say something? Well, people have a tendency to not want to make the call, not want to say something, not express their concerns. And I think episodes like this are going to change people's mind. I think what's going to happen is if you know somebody is mentally ill and you have concerns, it's going to prompt people to make the call. And intervention in this case absolutely could have made a difference, or in a case like that. So first of all, if you get that call and you say, I'm concerned about the situation, so-and-so is mentally ill, they're living in a home, they have access to guns, there can be an intervention. You can intervene, you can go rectify that situation. That may have stopped it. The other thing is that the person who's mentally ill themselves isn't supposed to possess a gun in the first place. So, you know, whether that safety net, you catch it. Barring all of that, in a like situation, if everything was acted on, we probably could prevent that here. Now, assuming that you can't stop all situations, you still have to make the target harder. Because the world unfortunately has changed. You know, we're a society that we've lost a lot of our values. And so this is probably going to get more prevalent, not less prevalent. And so we now know we have to take these steps. We have to make the targets harder. But yes, there were things that could have been done in that case. And obviously, not to beat up on that community or what they did and they didn't do, but those things that you outlined were all actionable things that are in law today and do have the provision for us to have an intervention, go into that home and rectify that situation. So, you know, we don't want to, because things can happen, but we do have a way to stop those things if we know about them. And then awareness, like having this meeting here, and awareness from the news every day it's still on, I think people will make the call, or you hope they will. So.
I had a two-part question, I guess, is it advisable, should we encourage the school to embrace curriculum that teaches kids and adults awareness, gun safety and stuff like that? I mean, is there, in you folks' opinion, would it be wise to make it a part of the regular curriculum, or should it be outside of the school activities?
We address gun safety in the SHIELD program, and we talk about, now guns in the home is a personal choice. So in New England, or in Wakefield, let's take Wakefield, you may have a child who grows up in a home that there's no guns. Well, that's great for that home, but that child's going to have friends, and they may be over a friend's house who does have guns. So all kids should have a basic awareness of gun safety. And for a child level of gun safety is, if you enter a room as a child and there's a gun present, leave the room, tell an adult. If every child gets that message, then the curiosity child who comes from a home that doesn't have guns is not going to pick that up and say, wow, I've seen these on TV. The basic message in the school setting, in this, what we teach is, child enters a room, gun, leave the room, tell an adult. Now, in that home that they're in, the child who grew up in that home may be fully trained and comfortable with the gun in that room. But this is a child who's not familiar with that house. So you can't say, well, I just won't have guns in my house and my kids will be safe. You have to say, well, your kids are also going to go to a home that there may be guns into. So the basic rule is, at a children level, stay away from them, tell an adult. As the children get older, it's the parents' choice when they want to introduce them to firearms, whether that be for sport, hunting, protection. And at that point, they should take the kids, or when they're old enough, to train them themselves, take them to a course, and teach them if they choose to, just like. But the basic thing is, we cover that. We cover that pretty good. It's a basic safety thing. So.
Jay, you want to talk?
Well, I wanted to make some comments. I do speak on behalf of the school administration. I don't speak on behalf of the board. But I appreciate the what I've learned tonight from those that have commented and those that have asked questions. But I wanted to share a few things that I feel I can share. Having a community with a lot of bird watchers makes the school safer. So I appreciate all of you being here and your interest. That's something that we couldn't budget for. That's something we get by being in Wakefield, and I appreciate that. I have full responsibility for the safety of all of your children. I accept that responsibility. It's not an easy one, but I accept it, and I want to say that to all of you. There are things that could happen that I will have no control over, but it's not going to be for lack of trying. I want to talk about 3 tools that we have in our tool chest briefly, and one at a little more length. The first tool that I look for in school security is looking at the features that we have in our site, our building, and in the equipment and supplies that we have in the building. So we need to look at all of that and assess that. The next tool that we have is our relationships and our communications. There have been instances in the 6 months that I've been here that we have contacted Wakefield Police and said, there's somebody coming in for a meeting, or we've heard that they're coming in, and this person seemed to be pretty on edge the last time we were there. And we just want to let you know we're expecting them around 10 o'clock. And we're not saying that we need to have you present, but if you could be in the area, if they're coming up the walk and they look really sketchy, we'd like to know that you're close. And your police department has been very responsive to that. There have been times that we specifically asked, could we be on a little more frequently on the routes because of something that we hear in the wind, and they've been responsive. So communication and relationships is a key tool that we have in our tool chest. Another tool that we have is honesty. And that honesty is not always pleasant. Sometimes the honesty is, as several have mentioned, I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. That's honesty. And another component of honesty is I have had, not from Wakefield, but I've been a superintendent for 7 years, I've had parents call me and say, can you tell me that my child's going to be safe in that school of yours? Absolutely not, ma'am. I cannot tell you that. But I can tell you that we are dedicating our staff, our budget to provide as safe and secure an environment as we can. And I think sometimes we want to give people the answers that they want to hear, and that undermines us, because we need to be honest, and I know that that's what this group is all about, is about honest public information. The fourth tool that we have in our tool chest that nobody's mentioned yet, so I'll talk about it briefly, is that schools in the United States, like police departments, fire departments, and others, are required to implement the National Incident Management System. Now, this is a system that's become a lot more consistently implemented since 9/11 for lots of reasons we could talk about, but won't. But it really developed out of the wildfires in the West. Because in wildfires in the West, you have so many different agencies that had to respond to wildfires that they had to deal with matters of communication and unified command in situations that got complicated, that they really have refined an incident management system at a better level than many of the other entities that existed nationally. So as a national incident management system got developed, it really grew out of that. We are required as a school system that people in roles that, I won't go into what this means, but people who are likely to be assigned to command roles in an incident have a requirement to take at least 3 courses in NIMS. That has not been the case for everybody up to this point, but this year we are making sure that those people are prepared. So I include emergency preparedness on every agenda of the administrative team. It was on my first agenda when I got here, it will be on my last agenda before I leave. Every time the administrative team gets together, we talk about a scenario. We talked about earthquakes a few months ago. What would we do if there was an earthquake during a school day? We talked about the incident in Connecticut after it happened. What would happen here? What is our preparation for this? We talk about incident command and management and how we train other people to take on those command and general staff responsibilities in an emergency. The other thing that we're doing is I actually have a meeting this Wednesday with my administrative team and the gentleman who is employed by New Hampshire FEMA specifically to deal with school security. He's going to be coming and spending 2 hours with my administrative team. And I hadn't, but Chief, if you would like to attend or send somebody, we'd love to have you there. The relationships are critical. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring in the experts. Would love to walk through the building with any of those that have spoken tonight if we could arrange it. We are looking for input. What we do with the input is not going to come back out. We take the input and we act on it. What we do is we train, we prepare. I have personally put out a fire in a school with a fire extinguisher. I know that can happen. That's a little scary. I have personally been in an incident in a school in which we had a lot more law enforcement vehicles at our site than there are people in this room. I know it can happen in Wakefield. I know it can, because I have not been on one of the incidents that you've seen on TV, but I've been in enough trouble to know that it can happen here. So we take it extremely seriously. The board is very interested in this, is very supportive. They are discussing it again tonight. We came here because we thought it was important to be here, but it's something that we deal with every day, and I accept full responsibility for your students. Particularly, I feel more comfortable with that, knowing that all of you are out there and that all of you are thinking about it and that you'd show up on your own time to talk about this topic. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. That was Jay. Anybody have any questions for Jay? Anybody want a free sandwich?
I have another meeting to go to. It's called the Alabama-Notre Dame football game. Tonight at 8:30.
Okay, well,
I think.
thank you, Frank. Thank you for bringing Jill and
I wish I would have sent the Patriots instead of that.
Yeah.
That's Sunday, Al.
That's Sunday.
folks, I think this was a pretty good gathering here. I do appreciate everybody coming out and giving us your input. I hope it helps ease some folks, especially parents out there in the town that are pretty nervous at times, and they don't always see the effort that these folks are giving us. And I believe that everybody here appreciates it. I think the town, once they get a chance to see or hear what we've had to say tonight, they'll appreciate it, and hopefully they express their appreciation. So, again, plenty of sandwiches and chips and drinks, and don't be shy. Next month, I think we're going to be talking about, what are we going to be talking about?
I don't know, what are we gonna be talking about?
We're going to be talking about elections and warrant articles.
No, geez.
Thank you, everybody.